Was today by a couple of legends of Nelson and Marlborough rugby in New Zealand. New Zealand Rugby Union President Max Spence, also Tasman Marco founder, which is no mean feat, and New Zealand Rugby Union board member Wayne Young, former Red Devils halfback. Gentlemen, good morning. Thanks so much for coming on our website. Very much appreciated.
Good morning, Johnny. Yeah, good to be here, John.
Max, brings back great memories, Max, from the Marco days when the Tasman Union formed. It was pretty tumultuous at the time, but you must be extremely proud of what's happened since.
I am, John. It's sort of it's provided particularly the players, but also administrators and referees and coaches a pathway into other opportunities outside of the realm. So that brings a lot of pleasure, not only to me, but the many people that were around back in the early 2000s when we started thinking about opportunities that sat in front of us. So that was the formative years, but we can't lose sight of the fact that following that period in the mid-2000s, some great things have been done by the people that have followed. So, you know, it's been a real team effort. So, yeah, it's a great story and one that I think is cherished by people outside of our province throughout the country, really.
Yeah, well, I know both of you would have been pretty proud of the way the Crusaders played last night, demolishing the Blues. 52-15. I didn't see that coming.
They didn't either. I spoke to some of the Crusaders after the game. Well, I spoke to some of the Blues as well, but the Crusaders were basically, I think it's probably fair to say, but when they went back into the shed at half time, they couldn't believe what had happened. It was almost a perfect performance in their first 40 and pretty well matched in the second as well, I'd add.
Yeah, it just shows, you know, there's issues obviously with Super Rugby that need fixing, and I'm sure people cleverer than me are working on that, but it just shows you how high a standard this competition can be.
Look, I agree. I mean, I won't hold all the commentary. I'll hand over to Wayne. He might have a comment to make.
No, I think it's not dead, is it? You know, at NZR we talk about trends and what's going on, and the fact is that probably there's less bums on seats now, Johnny, but the broadcasting side of things is going through the roof next, isn't it? So it's still popular, it's still relevant, and you get a game like that last night. Not so good for old Ranny from Blenheim, Tasman, but what a game! Wow, the ball, I looked at it and you reflect on it, the ball that the Blues had to work with compared to the Crusaders was so much slower, wasn't it? So they did a fantastic job at breakdown, I thought.
Yeah, they were wonderful. And just how the so-called lesser players stood up. I mean, there's 8 All Blacks out. They had 12 first-choice team members out. That's just phenomenal.
Yeah, they've built depth, haven't they, Max?
Yeah, well, I only think back to the week before. You know, they finished the game with 13 men on the park, and there wasn't 3 yellow cards. It was just a case of the injury toll that occurred during the game. And to be able to go away for a week and prepare in a way that brought that performance last night was just incredible. And both teams would have run out of rugby off the park full of emotion. Both teams were farewelling their head coaches and some of their staff. So it was the end of an era for both the Crusaders and the Blues. There were players that were playing their last game, as it's turned out for the Blues, and players that were playing their last game, well, at this stage, until we know the outcome of tonight's game with the Chiefs and the Brumbies, but it could well be that some of the guys last night, from a Crusaders perspective, played the last time at Orange Theory. So I know they were choked with a lot of emotion, and when you go out in that sort of a state, there's really only 2 things that can happen. It either works for you or it doesn't. And probably we saw the 2 extremes of that last night.
Yeah, exactly.
Also, not to be missed is the Tasman influence. I mean, you've got the players, but we've got 2 coaches there too, Max, and Dan Kieran and James Marshall. Yeah. So we talk about pathways and that, and we're so fortunate in the in the region, in the Crusaders region, of how things are developed, and it's not the same everywhere. So you look at the model the Crusaders have got, and if we go right back to when we split the CEOs, and Hamish went from having a dual role to the CEO of the Crusaders, and we've got Tony Smale now, and the Canterbury setup. It's fantastic. It's really come a long way as far as a partnership between Canterbury, Tasman, that I think there's brothers there, and then overriding it is the Crusaders. So our model is fantastic, and you look at a pretty short time frame, Max, and it's come a long way.
Yeah, it's fabulous.
And there's a message there, you know, it gives those organisations an opportunity to focus on what their intent is. And, you know, we all hear the conversations that are being had at the moment between the Australian New Zealand unions with regards to the benefit of the Commission running Super Rugby. And, you know, I think there's some real merit there. And, you know, Wayne's comments about splitting the responsibilities of the CEOs out so they focus on either Super Rugby or provincial rugby has worked well for the top of the South and the whole of the Crusader region. And so the question remains now, what will happen if we could get this idea of a commission going, where Super Rugby has a focus aside from everything else that's going on with the administration of rugby. So I think, you know, it's a really necessary debate, and good will come from it.
Yeah, for sure. Wayne, you've had, I think, about a year on the board now, and what are your observations? It's been a pretty tumultuous on occasions with the All Black coaching saga, and thankfully that's sorted out. How have you found it? Was it any surprises for you?
Yeah, it's quite nice to reflect now, because a year or so has gone pretty quick, Max. I came on, and my mentor here from the South Island brought me through, and you sort of reflect on things, and it's really quick. Time's flying, so that actually means you're probably having fun, Johnny. If it's nice and slow, it's probably not so good. So very good. A lot of learnings, different level. You know, you go back and you come through your club, which for me is central, of course. You get into the admin there, then you come through to Marlborough, maybe. I didn't, but straight to Tasman, and then NZR. You know, it's the same, but it's different. So the learnings of it are, you know, probably as you step up, there's so much happening, there's so much big ticket items, and yeah, it's really busy, and lots of big decisions. So probably in the last year, we've seen some really frantic times, Max.
Yeah, look, and I think we're very fortunate that rugby's our national game, and as a consequence of that, just about everybody has an opinion and interest in the game, and we wouldn't want it to be any other way, to be honest, John. But you only need to walk from one end of a street to the next, to the other, and you will get a sense of the emotion that people have for the game, and they might not hold the same views, and that's democracy. But at the same time, those views may be the way they are because we haven't told our story properly, and so communications back out to our public is critical as well as it is for our member unions. But if you take what we've been grappling with, and the COVID piece is sort of well and truly understood, but you know, we can never lose sight of the fact that COVID got in the way of our normal lifestyle, and competitions got broken, and we had to stand up those again within the parameters that had been set by government policy at the time for the good of the health of the nation. So that was a real challenge, and part of the downside of COVID was a drop off in registration numbers. People stopped participating, and even people stopped going to the game, because there was when they couldn't because games weren't being played, or they chose not to because they didn't know whether it was safe or not. So a lot of work's going into rebuilding numbers and participation, be it player or spectator, whatever. But a couple of other things that I think have really been a challenge for us was this whole private investment, the equity issue, and the fact that that had to be sold to our provincial unions and our players associations. So that was a challenge, and one that we had never experienced before. And there was good press and bad press around that, but over a period of time we got there. So we should never lose sight of how significant that process was, let alone the outcome.
It was a long process too, Max.
Yeah, it was a long process, yeah. But I think it went, at the end of the day, people had their say, and can't deny them of that. The other point that I would like to make, John, is that we've turned a corner, and rugby's led the way in many respects around diversity and inclusion, and that's with regards to making the game safe for everybody, in terms of race, colour, and creed, and gender, and you think about the game that's being played today and who plays the game or participates in it and takes an interest in it, and the LGBT plus is a major part of our interest group now that we have to be considerate of, and there's been a lot of press around that in the last couple of years, and I was really proud of our organisation, New Zealand Rugby, and that we participated in the Rainbow Excellence Business Awards as a first-time entry. We picked up the awards in the two categories that we entered, but we went on and won the Supreme Award. And it's a real mind shift for a sports code, but an organisation also that over 130 odd years has been ground out in clubs around New Zealand, bar leaners on a Saturday night, a few beers on a Thursday. It's been very traditional, and a game played by men, for men, and it's a different environment today. And so, it's been a steep learning curve for those people that have had a real interest in the game over many years, to find now that in actual fact we do embrace the societal change. And the reason why I bring it up is just it's really dramatic when I look back, and even in the 4 years that I've been associated with my role with New Zealand Rugby, it's a major change, and we've accepted it, and I think we're much better placed for it, but it created some challenges, because we all hold different views, and so those views have obviously been debated in many dark corners from one end of the country to the other, but I think we're through that now, John.
Yeah, hats off to you for that particular part of the game too. And Wayne, grassroots rugby, it's very close to your heart. You played till you were 48, and you're still coaching club rugby, the central team. And how is the health of grassroots rugby, or at least in the top of the south?
It's not great, to be fair, Johnny. It's hard work, and I suppose you look at the volunteer base, harder to get people involved. There's so many options now for our young people, and I don't think it's a secret. There's the attitude of we want to turn up and do something, bang, we want it now, we want that rush now. So other sports probably provide that a bit better. So maybe we've got to think differently for our youth, and it's easy to talk about and reflect on it, but it's actually doing. So I look at our club health, and in Marlborough, you'd know we're down to 3 senior teams in the Tasman Trophy, and we've got such a proud club system. What I would say is the second division comp in Marlborough is really alive and strong, and I suppose you've got your senior comp with the Tasman Trophy Max, and that hill is quite a big obstacle. So I think for administrators, it's getting the mix right between Tasman Trophy and your club competition, and with that becomes it is a very elite competition, and Central are doing very, very well. Big game today, but maybe that's for later. You know, it's getting the mix for the guys that want to come through and beat Marco, and then there's a big catchment that get to a point where that door's closed, so they just want to play the best rugby they can with their mates, because we all know rugby's about friendship, a sense of belonging, and the values we all hold dear. So it's hard times, and it's providing, I think it goes right throughout the game, it's providing pathways, whether we're talking club rugby, schoolboy rugby, everywhere you look, it's getting the mix between the elite side of rugby and the amateur, but community side. So I think that's our real fix going forward, is getting that mix between professionalism and amateur, and not getting too carried away with everything being elite. I think we've probably learned some lessons along the way, and that's got to be a focus going forward.
Yeah, I know over here in Australia, one thing I have noticed is the concentration, the big focus they have on grassroots and the AFL and rugby league in particular, and in summer and cricket, and it seems to work pretty well. I know it's a much bigger population base and economy, but it's a similar principles, isn't it?
Yeah, it is, and I mean, it's if we don't get it right, where do we end up in 7 or 8 years' time for our national game? So it's a focus, and I hear it a lot, and I heard it before I came into my role. But I can assure you, it's top of the table as far as what we're considering and what we're working on. So, and that starts with our youth, you know, JAB right through to under 18, and then into senior rugby, which obviously it's all a funnel, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Max, a jewel in the crown, certainly since the Women's Rugby World Cup, is the women's game. I mean, they were fabulous to watch, and I understand there's been a massive boost in participation, as there has over here.
Oh, absolutely. We're seeing that, and I haven't seen numbers for the current season, but you know, during the course of last year, and you've got to remember that 2022 registration for girls in rugby grew significantly over 21. Again, you know, we've got some influence here of COVID, but in 2021, the Blackfeets had a bit of a tough year up in the Northern Hemisphere when they went over and played England and France. And so things weren't looking that great for the World Cup being played, 2021 being played in 2022. And so, you know, to your point, the outcome was astonishing. It came as a surprise to most people, but the growth in the women's game was happening prior to the success last year in October. And so whilst I don't know the numbers for this year, it certainly generated a continual growth in the game, which is what New Zealand Rugby is trying to take advantage of now in terms of the success of the girls, and drive the game into those new channels. But again, the interesting thing is that there were traditional rugby supporters who hadn't probably devoted too much time to supporting the girls' game, the women's game. And even as the World Cup was approaching, you know, OPICI, which is the professional competition for those super clubs here in New Zealand, didn't attract necessarily attention through a wide audience. But by the time we got into the World Cup, and certainly at the conclusion, there were a number of people who acknowledged the fact that they hadn't watched the game before, but they weren't going to miss it for quits. And I think the number of people that would have tuned in the latter part of the competition, and certainly for the Blackfeets semi-final and final, was just simply amazing. And these are people that were new to the game in respect to supporting women's rugby. Now, we've maintained that, and I think we've locked that support in now, but it will be dependent on the ongoing success of the Blackfeets. But boy, have they got a bright future.
Have they? And they're very, very good at connecting with their fans, aren't they? when you look at them on Facebook, they just the sheer joy they show about playing the game and being involved.
Absolutely. And they're not burdened by history, so they've got that legacy of 130 years of wearing a black jersey and a sort of, for the sake of the numbers, an 80% win ratio that they've got to maintain. They can go out there and they play their game, they play the style. They enjoy it, and we see that. We see that when they line up for the national anthem. We see the way they train. We see the way they warm up before the game, and it's compelling. And for those people to get the opportunity to get along and observe what goes on around the game, not actually just the game, we've got to learn from that. We've got to make sure that we go back and take those situations where the game's played to enjoy back out into our community and encourage our clubs to instill that in the participants at a young age, and they take that through, and we can get over those two gaps where we get that natural drop off in participation as they go from sort of intermediate into secondary school, and as they leave secondary school and go into real adulthood, and you've got the distractions of work and a significant change in lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it's keeping them engaged.
Absolutely. So, gentlemen, finally, how are the All Blacks going to go at the World Cup? Wayne, first, are you confident that Fozzie and the crew will take the boys through?
Yeah, I am definitely. I don't know if we're allowed to offer thoughts on selection policy and that, Max, are we? I'm not sure. I'm certainly, I've got my ideas of players in positions, and that's what's great about the game. We all have different ideas, but Aussie's the only real person that gets tested, eh? I mean, our teams don't run out, so yeah, I'm confident. I think perhaps we don't go in as hot favourites like maybe in previous years. That might be an advantage, and it's a real knockout. I mean, anyone can win. You go through 6 teams, and it's going to be a fantastic World Cup, and we're right in the mix. So hopefully we don't get many more injuries, and I would suggest we'll be in that final match.
What about you, Max? Are you equally confident the All Blacks will do the job?
Well, I've had the privilege of travelling with them last year to South Africa, and then on the end of the year tour, where they played Japan and then went up to Wales and Scotland and ultimately England, and so I was able to see the workings of the team and the players and the coaching staff and the wider management group. So I thought they had a good second half of the year. They learned a lot from the Irish series, and so we can't lose sight of the fact that what went on in Japan through to the last game against England was all about preparation for France. We've got great depth, and I think that's our strength, is the depth of our player base. But we only need to think of last night, and you've already touched on it, John, that the Crusaders had 8 All Blacks unavailable for the semi-final last night through injury. So you take that across all our teams, and we're relying on that depth, and hopefully we'll have some of our seasoned campaigners back in time and available for selection for France, but we've got the Rugby Championship before that, so we're going to have some recognised All Blacks unavailable as they
It'll be interesting for the championship, whether we experiment or whether we go in with what we've known. It's an opportunity to experiment, but I don't know, in that black jersey, do you do that or don't you do it? There'll be some questions around that too, won't there?
Well, Ian Foster's got one thing to focus on. It's winning the World Cup. He doesn't have to concern himself about building for 2024. So he'll be picking a squad in both the Rugby Championship and the World Cup to achieve those ends. For Wayne's point, based on seedings, now not when they did the draw, but your top 4 seeds being Ireland, France, New Zealand and South Africa. So there's 4 great teams, 4 great rugby nations, and 2 of them are going to go home after the quarterfinals. and it doesn't matter which two it is. If you think of the semi-finals not having two of those teams, either in France, be it either of those, or South Africa and New Zealand, you think, well, you've ripped the heart out of the competition. But we've got Scotland that are playing great rugby at the moment. We shouldn't underestimate them. But yeah, it is a bit of a tragedy that two of the top four seeds won't be there at semi-final time.
What's the feel like in Aussie, Johnny?
Oh, well,
With rugby people?
Rugby people say, they echo Mac's thoughts about the draw, how ridiculous that is, making it so early for a start. But as far as the Wallabies goes, as soon as Eddie Jones stepped into the job, the whole persona of rugby changed over here. He's just a man that exudes confidence. He doesn't, he rubs some people up the wrong way, but I've got a lot of time from him, and I think, don't underestimate the Wallabies. I'm not saying they're going to win the World Cup, but they'll be not too far away, I think, by the time he's got them to the event.
I have to say, Hooper on the open side for the Wallabies. We talk about our legends and Richie and Michael Jones and that. That man, unbelievable. I mean, imagine if he was playing behind a black pack at number 7 and all he does for Australia. So I take my hat off to that guy in particular. Pocock wasn't far behind him, So they battle away, and he's had some issues, in the last couple of years. But what a fantastic player! He's a real legend.
Yeah, he is too. And I'm lucky enough to be going to the World Cup, and I think it's probably the most open World Cup that I can remember since '87.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know, Johnny, I just have to mention a good mate, Jason Landon lost his dad last night, Kelly Landon. He's been battling, so just to mention to Cal, Jace, and the family, we're all thinking about him. Kelly was an absolute legend for our club, for Marlborough, and a real stalwart. So.
Yeah, that's very sad. Yeah, commiserations to the family. Great man, Kelly. Talk about grassroots. He personified it. Max and Wayne, thanks so much for your time. Really appreciate it. And Max, lovely to see you again, mate. And congratulations on what you did for Tasman and what you're doing for New Zealand rugby. It's awesome.
Good on you, mate. It was a team effort. As time's gone on, water's gone under. People seem to think that it was something that I did very much on my own, but that's not the case. And there were a lot of people on both sides of the Whangamala that worked to make this happen, and we're reaping the consequences.
I'm going to butt in, Johnny. I mean, we talk about that, and the great thing here is this all the time, and perhaps our 6-year-olds and our 15-year-olds, girls and boys. Do you want to be a Griffin? What's a Griffin? You want to be a Red Devil? What's a Red Devil? They want to be a Marco, and it's not lost. Max, bit of a joker, so he's still a Nelson. What do we call him? Bloke. Nelson, bloke. And I'm still a Marlborough bloke. Well chosen.
Yeah. And John, and I know we've got to wrap up, and this is your show, not ours. But one thing that I'd like to just comment on, back around Easter, I was in your fine city, assuming that we're talking about Brisbane here, but I just want to acknowledge the work that Queensland rugby fraternity, both from a union perspective, but also the public, what they do for the game. It deserves recognition. I went to the Reds Crusaders and then the Reds Brumbies. The Crusaders was played in wonderful weather, and the following week it was awful. It was rain. It was a totally different environment, but both were a great experience. And for me, to be able to drive to a shopping centre and get on a bus, get a sun cool, and sit in great seats and watch a great package, pre-game, half-time, and the game itself. It wasn't the greatest game that was played that round between the Crusaders and Reds that weekend, but the whole environment that I experienced was outstanding. The crowd were in good spirits, And, you know, if I take that as an example of what can be done, you know, the game's, the actual physical going to a stadium and experiencing a game of rugby and the package that goes around it, it was outstanding. And I came away feeling, you know, really confident that rugby's alive and well in Queensland. And it was a great crowd, you know, no nonsense. Having transport to and from the ground made a huge difference. And I'd love to think we can organise something like that around our facilities here, because it takes a lot of stress out of it. And access to the park, avoiding issues with parking, you know, real simple things, but it made the whole experience painless, and it was a credit to them, and I enjoyed it immensely.
Yeah, they do it pretty well over here for sure. Well, gentlemen, thank you once again. Thank you so much for your time. It's very much appreciated, and all the best for the coming months for the New Zealand Rugby Union and the World Cup. With a bit of luck, we'll catch up over in France. Have a beer.
Oh, absolutely. We know we got your support, Jonathan.
Totally. Yeah. Thanks, guys.